Gunshots ring out in the walls of the tenements, the same walls now stained with blood, the stains swimming with tiny moving particulates. Officer Cronenberg runs down the long, echoing stairwell, clutching his nauseated gut, terrified of the things chasing him. Because that's what they are. Not humans, but things. He looks up when he hears the shuffling and sees the shadows moving against the walls. Oh no, they're coming. He pulls his pistol out of the holster and clutches it tight with one trembling hand, caked in dried blood. He'll go out shooting. He won't let those monsters take him. He'll let them kill him before they get a chance to take him. In running down the stairs to get away from the monsters pursuing him, he'd somehow never anticipated that they'd be waiting below him too. But that's exactly the case. He sees the double doors at the bottom of the stairs burst open and more terrible shapes spill in at the bottom of the stairwell. He's surrounded on all sides. It feels like death itself is closing in. But don't worry, dear viewer. He's not going to die. Something so much worse is going to happen to him. Let's rewind the clock a few hours. It's a quiet night when Officer Cronenberg receives the call. He's prowling the city in his patrol car, shining light on all the little nooks and crannies of the concrete jungle, when his radio crackles to life. The dispatcher crowing orders about unusual activity reported in some crumbling old tenement a few blocks away from him. Officer Cronenberg rolls his eyes. Probably drug addicts or two-bit wannabe gangsters. They would scatter like insects underneath an upturned rock as soon as he arrives. That much he's sure of. And of course, one part of that thought was true, just not the part he ever would have expected. He arrives outside the tenement not long after. It was one of the city's many overpriced red brick husks, the ghosts of buildings tattooed in graffiti, ruled by slumlords and populated by the desperate and the dying, the elderly, smackheads, petty criminals, honest families experiencing a temporary run of bad luck that turned out to be not so temporary. The whole place stinks of trash, black mold, and human misery. But as a rough and tumble beat cop, that's his bread and butter. Officer Cronenberg thinks he's seen it all. He's seen men murdered over less money than you'd think to spend on an evening at the movies. He'd seen people exploited and mistreated. Horrible things done by one human being to another for no good reason. Money, hate, respect, whatever. With all this in mind, he doesn't expect to see anything in the building that he hasn't seen before. However, in this case, he's horribly wrong. When he steps into the building, he's greeted by an empty lobby with 2 broken elevators and nobody at the front desk. The lights are dim and flickering. The tiles on the ground are cracked. It's about what he expected. He approaches the desk in hopes of getting some indication of who called in the complaint. Dispatch hadn't actually specified which apartment reported the activity in the first place, but he doesn't find answers to that. Instead, he finds a faded pamphlet printed on cheap paper. The largest font reads, "Order of Theseus, a new way of living." Some kind of church group, he wonders? Morbid curiosity, mixed with investigative instincts, encourages him to read on to the only paragraph on the pamphlet that's still legible. It reads, "Are you stuck in a rut? Tired of waking up as the same old you every day? Do you feel lonely? Is life just passing you by? Don't fret. We know how you feel. With Theseus, you can change all of that. Become a community that truly cares. Become a new you. Meetings are held every Thursday at apartment 1408 on floor 8. We can't wait to add you to our special family." This rings alarm bells for Officer Cronenberg. It sounds like some kind of New Age cult. Manson family, David Koresh, Heaven's Gate vibes all around. Definitely the kind of thing that warrants further investigation. Almost instinctively, he places his hand to the butt of his service pistol, holstered at his hip, as though to check that it's still there, then heads for the stairs. He knows exactly where he's going. Apartment 1408 on floor 8. Maybe he'll find some answers to the nature of the disturbance up there. After several flights of stairs, he's walking down the long hallway towards the offending door. He's just gonna ask a few questions. He won't start anything unless they start something. They'll respect the badge, or they'll respect the gun. All these comforting platitudes flood his brain as he reaches out and knocks on the door. It swings open, revealing a dark room. How strange for a person in an apartment block like this to leave their door unlocked in the middle of the night. That, to him, is enough probable cause to investigate. He steps inside, clicking on his flashlight to peer through the gloom. The room is a hovel, trash strewn everywhere, interspersed with candles and other strange, almost religious knickknacks. There are posters on the wall, scrawly and handmade, all bearing the words of the so-called Order of Theseus. He's unnerved, but also invigorated. A cult? Maybe if he bursts this open, he'll get promoted to detective. His fantasies of promotion, of a rise to prominence on the force, are cut short when his beam falls upon a human figure standing in the corner of the room, grinning in the dark. Without a second's hesitation, Officer Cronenberg draws his pistol with a trembling hand and points it at the lurker in the dark. He orders them to freeze.
"There is no need for violence, officer," the lurker says. "It is a joyful day. You're about to become a part of something so wonderful."
The lurker raises his arms. At first, Officer Cronenberg thinks he's holding a strange weapon in one of his hands, some kind of twisted black knife. But no, he's not holding a weapon. That's his arm. It's long and gnarled, with too many joints covered in a thick, chitinous shell. Not a person's arm, the arm of some giant insect. When the lurker takes a step forward, Officer Cronenberg can't contain himself. He levels the pistol and damn near empties the clip into the lurker, causing him to crumple to the ground in a heap. But after the ringing of the gunshots fade, there's another sound. Footsteps all around the building. More civilians, Officer Cronenberg assumes, as he suppresses the urge to vomit and stumbles out into the hall. However, in the hall, he doesn't see the assembled crowd of concerned neighbors that he expects. Instead, he sees them, the others. The dirty and disheveled inhabitants of the apartment block, each one with a transfigured limb. That horrible insect appendage. He needs to get out of here. He's surrounded by monsters. Which brings us full circle. Not long after this, he's running for his life down the stairwell, hoping to escape the madness, when more of those insect limb freaks burst through the door in front of him and block his path. It's time to go out shooting, Officer Cronenberg. He can't even keep track of how many rounds are still in his magazine, but he draws a bead on the bugman at the front of the crowd and fires a shot. It's the best of his life, catches the mutant clean in the center of his forehead. And he can't tell if it's real or if he's losing his mind from fear, but he swears that in the darkness of the hole he just blew into the stranger's skull, he can see something moving, like there's something alive in there. Millions of little lives wrapped up into one. He turns without even thinking, anticipating the tide of insect men behind him, but one is standing right there. The man unleashes a wet cough into Officer Cronenberg's face, dooming him to become just like all the others. Despite his valiant efforts, Officer Cronenberg has become infected. None of this is normal, but it is if you're infected by SCP-150, the body-jacking parasite codenamed the Ship of Theseus. It's a famous thought experiment inspired by the vessel of the ancient Greek demigod of the same name. If you took the Ship of Theseus and over time replaced the mast, the hull, the bow, the oars, and the sails, when all is said and done, when none of the original parts are left, is it still the Ship of Theseus or something else entirely? Philosophical questions like this are likely to plague the mind of someone infected by the SCP-150 parasites, an anomalous breed of almost microscopic louse, similar in appearance to the infamous tongue-eating Cymothoa exigua. But the degree to which these creatures will alter the body of their host make the tongue-replacing insect look positively quaint by comparison. When the SCP-150 parasites first infest the body, they will incubate and multiply over the course of 7 days, devouring the central systems of the body and laying eggs in all of the victim's blood vessels. Little by little, the interior of the victim is essentially hollowed out and filled with parasites, capable of working conjunctively and seamlessly replacing the body's most vital systems, up to and including the brain and nervous system. Of course, the SCP Foundation is no stranger to parasites. But in many ways, this one is more deceptively effective at its job, thanks to a few different vital biological mechanisms. The victims won't feel pain or discomfort due to the immunosuppressants that prevent their bodies from rejecting the parasites, and the psychological effects of the parasites will prevent them from ever even perceiving their infection as a problem. Transmission is also incredibly easy. The victims will cough, sending out clouds of microscopic eggs that will burrow into the victim's flesh. And after that 7-day incubation period, the new victim will be spreading the eggs too. An almost perfect system. However, you may have keenly spotted one design flaw of the SCP-150 parasite in Officer Cronenberg's experience. The limb nearest to the site of infection will be gradually transformed on a molecular level, giving it the appearance of a freakish insectoid appendage. While the infectee won't see a problem with this, the same definitely cannot be said for the people around them, who will generally react with abject horror upon seeing the transformation. It is your only advance warning sign to get the hell out of there before a cough infects you in the exact same way. Naturally, it eventually came time for the Foundation to perform an autopsy on someone infected with the SCP-150 parasites. The task fell to 3 researchers with a medical specialty: Dr. Harlan Sun, Dr. Wendy Robin, and Dr. Alex Harlow. The subject of their experiments, which had a particular focus on how SCP-150 infection affected brain matter, were 2 members of D-Class personnel, D-13732 and D-016002, who were both intentionally infected and given time for the infection to gestate in their unknowing bodies. After the initial gestation period, D-13732 was euthanized following a neurosurgery that revealed an uncomfortable fact. Their entire nervous system had been replaced by clustered instances of SCP-150. However, all was not lost, as the cluster of parasites that had replaced their brain was stored away safely for the rest of the test. Perhaps the most significant part of the study was the live neurosurgery on D-016002, performed by Drs. Sun, Robin, and Harlow. The D-Class was first given a numbing agent before having their skull caps surgically removed. This revealed again not a brain, but a cluster of SCP-150 sitting in the cranium where the brain should be. The doctors began interviewing their peculiar patient while continuing to monitor brain activity, all in hopes of better understanding how the parasites replaced the functions of the organs they devoured. When the D-Class was asked his name, he responded that it was Mako. He was correct. When Mako was asked to name something to sit in, he said chair. And when asked what colored grass was, he predictably responded green. And when asked the simple sum, what is 1 + 1, after a brief pause, he responded 2. This line of questioning allowed the researchers to identify the parts in the 150 cluster that processed language and communication, so the test proceeded. They removed instances of SCP-150 and placed them in small glass vials, which were separated from the mass and placed across the room for a period of 10 minutes. It was only after each one was removed from the cluster that they stirred into life and began to wriggle. The experiment continued once 100 of the instances had been removed from the pseudo-neural mass. At this point, Dr. Sun repeated the same series of questions to Mako. The responses were the same, except a little slower, accounting for the reduced pseudo-neural mass. This was when the experiment got interesting. 100 samples of SCP-150 from the extracted brain mass of the euthanized D-Class were transplanted into Mako's brain mass to see if the 150 parasites were capable of transferring cognitive abilities across hosts. They were pleased with the results. Upon asking the same set of questions, the answers came at their original speed once again. Except this time, the answers were slightly different. Mako answered with couch instead of chair, blue instead of green, but thankfully still 2 as an answer to 1 + 1. But this wasn't quite ambitious enough for the researchers. If a small portion of 150 parasite tissue was transferred without rejection, did this mean that the same was true on a larger scale? It was a question as compelling as it was frightening, and it inspired them to conduct their ultimate test, removing the entirety of Mako's brain mass and replacing it with the brain mass of the deceased D-Class. They asked the same questions again, and the answers were different. But the nature of the answers wasn't nearly as interesting as the fundamental change underpinning them. This wasn't Mako, it was Michael. The life and personality of the deceased D-Class had taken over that of Mako. SCP-150 parasite clusters, it seemed, retained the soul, so to speak, of the person who was first infected. Due to the incredibly infectious nature of SCP-150, the SCP Foundation has been forced to take the utmost precautions in keeping them secured, contained, and protected. You've probably already guessed that they've been given the KETER Class designation, and Foundation protocol dictates that patients like the ones above are kept in Level 3 biohazard protection containment cells, separate ones, of course, in order to prevent them from collaborating. SCP-150 parasites outside of host bodies are all kept in vacuum-sealed glass flasks in the Site-42 Infectious Materials Lab. If any samples of SCP-150 are found in the wild, they are to be immediately incinerated as a safety precaution. But in a sense, maybe the Order of Theseus were onto something. These unique parasites are a path to many things: regeneration, universal organ donation, the life of the mind beyond the death of the body. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, being infected wouldn't be so bad. Or maybe that's just the parasites talking again. Now check out SCP-213 Antimatter Parasite and Planet Parasite SCP-3003 The End of History.